Our speaker for this session, Tuya, is a senior specialist for product development in MasterCard and an alumni of SIT. Today, he'll be sharing his enriching experience in the technology industry and tips to tackle your next technical interview. Without further ado, let's welcome Tuya.
So thanks for the intro, Carlton. So let me quickly share my screen. Right, so it's here. Oh, good. Okay, so let's get started. Thanks so much for joining this session. I know some of you probably going through exams and applying jobs and things like that, but I will try to make this worth your time. So it's probably about 45 minutes and try to ask a lot of questions because whatever I cover here is more or less very general. So if you have questions, you probably won't have a lot of chance to ask to the public or even the career counselors in your school. So I will tell more about why that's so in a while. So try to ask all the questions that you have in your head. Doesn't matter whether it looks stupid or it's so simple, just write it down. We can go through it later. Right. So this talk will be about technical interview. And this is very crucial steps for developer or programmers to get their first job. And more or less, I can see about 90% or 99% of the jobs that require you to write code will have this thing, right? So, and this can either break or make it. Sometimes you can't even get into the actual interview if you don't pass their technical interview. So this will be a good things to share right now. Right, so this is me. I'm Kyaw. Currently, I'm in MasterCard, like it's been shared before. So if you want to connect with me, you can either go through Twitter or LinkedIn. This will be shared again after the slides are over. So, and just a little bit of warning, these are based on my experience, right? And I'm not affiliated with any other organizations. I'm not doing any career coaching or alumni coaching or things like that. So this is based on my experience and my experience alone. So I would ask you guys, right? I did my bachelor's in University of Glasgow about 5 years ago. Then I graduated over there. I studied computing science and pretty much like you guys, like I didn't know what I wanted to do at first. I didn't know what kind of things I should prepare to get a job. I didn't know there will be a technical interview. I pretty much thought that if you're from com science degree, they were just like, yeah, you're good, right? So yeah, so graduation, right? When the graduation comes, you probably think what's next after I receive my paper, right? What do I do with it? So most of the people, right, they will start preparing resume. It probably some people prepare before the graduation, but some people prepare after the graduation because you probably go for like graduation trips and all that, right? So you write your resume, you sort of apply through individual job portal, right? Be it company website or job portal, be in person, as someone you know to refer you for jobs. And yeah, of course, you apply for a job, you get invited for interviews, then you get hired, right? So that's what I thought when I first graduated. I applied for a job, they look at my resume, they're impressed, invite me to interview, I impress them, then they sort of hire me on the spot. But yeah, doesn't really work that way in real life because there's a lot of things you have to consider before you hire someone from a higher perspective as well, right? So this is a roadmap that I sort of drafted out. Upon application of job application, right, there are a lot of interview you have to go through. Like some of them, they don't really brand it as an interview, but they are still judging you nonetheless. So before you receive an offer from a company, you have to go through things like screening interview, on-site interviews, and also management interview. And sometimes you even have to do things like behavior and cultural fit interview, right? So some other A-string company will ask you to come and work with them for a moment, like maybe one day, and see how you can actually communicate with other people, whether you can really do the job is required and things like that. So, I mean, those companies good or bad, right? Like depends on what you prefer. I really prefer to walk with the people over there first to understand, but just one day you can't really understand a lot of things, or you don't really know that person until you really work with them for what, few months anyway. So for this talk, right, I will only cover these two parts, which is the technical part of things, right? Screening interview and the on-site interviews. The management interviews, then the behavior and culture thing, it will probably be covered by your career advancement division, or some career coach from the school hired, right? So they will probably do that. So what they can't provide, I will provide as an alumni coming to talk to you guys about this. And these are crucial because if you don't pass screening, forget about getting all the others interview, right? If you can't pass the stage 2, you will never reach the stage 3 and 4. It happens, but very, very, very rare chance that you will reach there. Okay, so the first thing, right? Screening interview. What is it and why do they do it? The first thing can be either one of these things or all of these things. So depends on how tough the company is to get in, right? So it can be just casual check. So someone will email you or call you up and says that, hey, I saw your job application. I really like your resume. I just want to have a culture chat and see whether you are interested in things that we are doing, right? And it can be just a phone call. Just give you a call. Are you person A who applied to this job, this position? Are you free on next week to come for a quick interview or something like that, right? If you just answer a call, you're in. The next thing will be online testing. So when you apply for a job, they don't really tell you anything. They just send you back an email, says that, hey, you go to this link and you finish some of the tasks that we give you. And based on the results, we will think what to do next. Right. So those are a bit, not so good in my opinions, because you don't really know the person. You are just trying to rely on the test to give you the best candidate possible, but it might not work out in the end. So another part of it is take-home assignment. So it's more like your school assignment. So they will just give you like the requirement and then the problem to solve, and give you like a week or some small window. So depends on the company. Some company will give you like a week, like Monday to Sunday. Some company will just give you like 3 days, like Friday night, they send you this. You got to submit by 11/5/9 Sunday. Right. Then there's another thing called live coding. So very big companies, they will do that, like live coding. Like live coding means you have to either be there in person and code in front of them, or they will send you a chat, like what we are doing right now, either Zoom link or whichever mediums that they prefer. You have to write it in front of them. So they will give you things, they will give you instruction, or they will give you problems that you have to solve it. So talk a little bit about culture check. So culture check, right? If you are just students and someone come and tell you like, hey, let's get a coffee, right? I just want to understand where you are, who you are. But don't think this is just casual, right? Even though they brand it as culture check, it's still an interview. So you have to be at your best self all the time. And you have to, whenever you engage someone from the company, right? Regardless whether they are interviewing you, not interviewing you, you have to be on professional level all the time, right? Unless you know the person beforehand, of course, that's different, right? So let's say you apply for company A, whoever from company A come and talk to you, you cannot just act unprofessional, because they might go and report to the HR, or they might be testing you whether you can act professional. Until you get to know the person in real life, then you can be casual. But before that, try to keep it professional, regardless what they say, right? They will say like you can wear sandals and all that to come down. We can meet at a coffee shop like kopitiam. But even though the setting is casual, remember, it's always never casual. It's just some interviewers trick to make you feel like yourself, and then they try to judge your real character. So try to be professional always until you get to know the person in like really. And then you can show yourself, right? So let's talk a bit about phone interview. So don't think for a second phone interview will be like, hey, how are you, right? Are you person A? When you're graduating? What are your interests? No, the phone interview, right? They will really ask you technical questions and you have to explain on the phone. Imagine like very difficult to explain on the phone, right? So my first ever phone interview, the person asked me about Java things like what's metamorphosis, what's polymorphism, what's object-oriented programming. You have to describe everything on the spot, right? So don't take it as, oh yeah, they just call me and ask me how I'm doing. No, it's not the case. They might even ask you questions like the light bulb questions. So if you don't know what light bulb question is, you can Google it. So it's more like a mind teaser, things like they might even out of blue ask you how many cups you can, you can fit into the bucket or something. How many cups of water can fit into the bucket? Then you stand, right? So they just want to know how you react to unforeseen circumstances. So phone interview is not just about asking questions like personal questions. It can be really technical and sometimes it go beyond. Right? So just to prepare. So like usually HR will tell you, are you free on that time slot? Right? If you're not free or you're not prepared, right? Just say no. Say, okay, I would prefer that you call me tomorrow, right? Because I have something on today. Don't just say like, I don't want to talk to you today. Okay, so you can always postpone it like 1 or 2 days so that you have time to prepare, right? So don't just very passive and like tell them you can take it, right? So you say, can I call you in like 5 minutes? Say sure, right? Then you screw up the interview, you lost your chance to get into the company. So don't ever accept yes. Try whenever people ask you for confirmation, if it's too rushed, don't do it. Like at least take 1 or 2 days so that you have time to prepare. So the next thing is online coding test. So online coding test is like depends on the company. They will either ask you 1 question, 2 questions, or a bunch of questions. It can be multiple choice. It can be fill in the blanks. It can be try to refactor the code that they provided. It can be solve the problems, everything entirely on your own, right? So this kind of thing you have to practice. So there's no shortcut for it, right? You have to practice, and coding platforms nowadays can sort of track you, right? So when you are coding, they take some photo of you from your webcam so that you can't really cheat. So that's one thing to note. And of course, so the coding questions can be very tough, right? And I mean, trust me, this problem is not tough. But I will run through with you why it is about. If you ever play Halo, or if you watch the Halo series that recently came out, so the blue guys are the bad guys, or yeah, I mean like one side, right? Then the green guy is one side. So the question will be like, if the bullet can pierce, right? How many bullets do you need to kill all these 5 blue guys? So from here you can just see I can roughly see like, okay, you probably need like 3, 4, right? Then how do you take this information and convert it into software problems, right? So like, how do you code it out, right? How do you code? What if they are like a bunch? The map is super big. It's not just this segment, right? It can be the number of enemy can be like n, infinity. So how do you calculate how many bullets do you need to kill them off at once? So the first thing that you should do as a software person is to apply your basic, right? So if you are looking at the map, of course you need coordinates, right? Like maps work with coordinates. And usually in computer science, we work with Cartesian space. So they're like 0 and 1, right? So you draw your grid, okay? So you draw grid ready, then you sort of know that, oh yeah, these guys are on the spot of the grid, and you label them, okay? So you label them. So the master chief is like 0, 1, the rest are like 0, 4, 4, 4, 2, 3, 2, 1, 4, 1. So you label all this already, right? Then you have to apply some formula to get this thing, right? I need 3 shots to kill them all. Right, but how do you formulate it in programming, right? You have to write code to solve this. And the number of enemy can be anything. It's not just 5. It can be 2,000, 5,000, 1 million. Then how do you solve it? So, and the thing is, they will try to see how efficient your solution is. So can you solve it with time or n, or space or a 1, right? What if there are more enemy? Can your solution scales to more enemy, right? So, and you have to know what's complexity now, right? Because you need to meet this ON complexity. And if you don't know what ON complexity is, you probably have to study some more. And yeah, there are some solution that is ON, some solution that is square. Yeah, so they will try to tell you like, okay, your solution is not efficient, so so sorry that we can't offer you to move to the next stage because the code you write is not efficient. And yeah, this can happen, right? So all these things you have to really go and study your basics, right? Data structure and algorithm courses, and a lot of books that you can actually study. There's a lot of YouTube video that you can study. And if you don't practice it, and if you encounter these kind of things, trust me, you can't solve it. And this is typed, so like they give you 30 minutes or like 1 hour to solve it. If you can't solve it and that's it, the timer go out, you lost your chance to get into the company, right? So this is some example questions. If you feel like you don't know how to do it, this is the good, nudging point for you to go and study so that whenever you face this question in the future job hunt, right, you can solve it. Okay, so these are some of the questions I list out, and by all, this is not exhausted list, okay? This is just some example. There can be a multiverse of things about how they can ask certain questions, right? It can be either, okay, what's the difference between hash map and an array? What's a binary tree? Define your complexity of the binary tree. What's insert, delete, update? How do you balance the binary tree? What's a balanced binary tree? And what are encapsulation, polymorphism? Describe the OOP concept. What's a compile language? What's some other languages? And is Java better than Python? Right. So as a developer or programmer, you probably have some favorite programming languages, right? Like I say, I'm a C guy, I'm a C++ guy, I'm a Python guy, right? But when the interviewer asks you, is Java better than Python? You have to verify, what do you mean by better? Is it faster mean better? Memory efficient mean better? Or you can write more code per seconds mean better, right? So you have to define what betters mean, right? So don't just take the question as it is and try to answer it. Try to verify, what do you mean by better, right? What do you mean by the difference between hash map? What kind of difference? Are you referring to the structural difference or complexity difference, right? You can't just say difference, right? You got to ask them what do you mean by these particular words, right? So don't just take the questions and answer it, right? Try to repeat the question so that when the interviewer listen back your questions that you repeat, they sort of know, oh, actually, no, I should have made it clearer, right? So this is what I meant. Yeah, then you should sort of like helping yourself to do the direct, correct answer, right? Instead of just, answering the question as it is. Try to verify, try to repeat, make sure that, you and the interviewer are on the same page. Of course, there's very famous questions. People like to make fun of it. Can you invert or mirror the binary tree? Right. You have the left side binary tree. Can you make it into the right side one? And it has to be mirror, right? If I flip that right side to the left, it should be exactly the same. Can you do that, right? A lot of people will struggle this because they never study the basic. And if you use Python, this thing can be done in like 3 lines of code, right? So these are easy problems. If you are struggling to do this, you really should go back to study back the basics. Okay, so yeah, so the answer is, yeah, maybe I can do it, I don't know, right? Then you probably need to go back and study. And trust me, you will be doing a lot of studying about all these basic things. By the time you hit like 5 years, 6 years, you probably get all these things in better of your head. If the people ask you to do this, you probably can do it with your eye closed. Okay, so now like I I explain what it is, but why do they do it, right? Like a lot of people argue about having this tech interview things not really proficient, not really good for the community and all these sort of things, but these are the reasons that they do it. One is to filter out the candidates. So like if the candidate is not prepared, right, it doesn't really know how to code, right, then they want to filter out all these people, right? You don't want to hire a programmer who can code. That's reality. And they also want to know you, right? So are you the type of person who always try to confirm before you commit, or you just commit, don't care, right? So you want to know this kind of personality trait from the candidates, and also try to judge your skills. Like, are you as impressive as you said in the resume? Because resume can flop, right? I can write anything in there. I can hire someone who is very professional at writing resume. Help me write resume, then I might not be as impressive as I said on the resume, and they want to catch that. So they want to really know you and try to judge your skill. And of course, the other thing is to filter out the candidates, right? Because company only have like 1 or 2 openings, so they can't just give out all the job to like 1,000 candidates. They have to filter it. So then these screening interviews are the best way to filter, because about 80% of them won't pass the first stage, and you'll be only competing with like 20%. So how do you prepare? Like, one, you need to know who you're meeting with. Are you meeting with someone very technical? Then expect a lot of tough questions, right? Are you meeting with like from HR department? Then they probably don't ask you any technical question. They probably refer to someone from the tech team to answer or to ask you that kind of tech questions. They will be more towards like your culture, your personality sort of thing. And they are trying to research their background. So they might be from, some organization that value personality more than your technical skills. So there are different type of people, right? So you got to know who you're talking to, what's their background, so that you can prepare accordingly. And of course, where are they from? Like, are they from like Singapore, local context, or are they from some other country, right? So because why I say where they're from, because the accent might be a challenging for the first comer when you go for interview and you can't understand the accent of other people, and you sort of like try to be nice and pretend you understand, but when they ask you questions, you answer some other things, which is not great, right? So if you can't understand the essence, just be polite and says that, hey, can you please like slow down for me, because it's too fast and I really can't get out. Don't know what I try to make sense from your accents. It's not your fault. It's just me. I'm not really familiar with your accents and things like that. If you're nice and if you're really open about this, interviewers are okay, right? So it's not just like, a deal breaker, because you are facing it for the first time anyway. And of course, not just for the research or the audience part, right? There's also your part. You have to be professional enough, and you have to impress the interviewer, right? You can't just be like, yeah, I'm good, I know, and only you know, and nobody knows. It's not great. So the first impression matters. So always be prepared. I said it before, even if it's a culture check, always prepare. They might ask you some tough question there, and if you can't answer it, yeah, you probably won't have a chance to get into the company anymore. Also, like, you have to know what you want, right? And why do you apply for this position? This question will always come out. Usually in HR interview, they'll ask you like, hey, why do you want to be software engineer, right? Like, why do you want to work as company X, right? We are doing this. Do you know? Sometimes people want to ask you, do you know what our core business is, right? And you're like, I don't really know. Then why are you applying, right? Like, you don't even know the company. Then how good you as a candidate be for the company, right? So you have to do all these things like due diligence about the role that you apply for. So don't just apply. Try to understand what they do. What's your responsibility, right? That's why I say if people ask you, can I talk to you in 5 minutes? Say no. Try to say nicely, and then push it back to tomorrow or the day after tomorrow, so that you have time to research all these things. Right? And another thing is, of course, hire a coach, right? So there's a lot of coaching services out there. If you are really struggling to get a job, you can hire it. Right? It's a good investment to make, in my opinion, because if you are graduates with no jobs, you're earning $0, whereby you can invest maybe $200, $1,000, then you get a good job, which is gonna give you like $4,000 to $5,000, that means you are making a lot more money than you're supposed to be making, right? So coach will try to coach you through the process, give you some materials, prepare you for a better job, and you know how to score your interview well. And when you hire a coach, be mindful. There's a lot of scammer out there as well. So yeah, do your own research and do it well, and do it with a warning, right? So not, I mean, having a coach doesn't mean you will get a job either way. So you have to gauge the pros and cons before you commit. Right, so move over to the on-site interview. This is the stage 2, okay? You pass your screening interview. Then the HR will come and say, hey, congratulations, you passed your planning, you passed your screening interview. Then we want to move you into the on-site interview, right? So most of the time, the first screening is like either phone call or the take-home assignment or the test, okay? So you pass the test, you sort of hit their threshold, and then they want to know you as a person. So they will invite you to the company to have the on-site interview. Okay, so the on-site interview, most of the time you will come down to the company. Then I will cover some tips that you can do for that. So the first thing is suit up, right? Why I said this is you have to always be professional, right? You just graduated, and imagine you are the hirer and you see someone who is putting effort to impress them, right? It's sort of good on your side, right? So wearing suit doesn't really impact your ability in any way, but it sort of presents you in better light than other people who never wear, right? So you don't have to like go all out like a full-blown formal with like suitcase and a tie, right? At least try to wear something decent, right? Like you probably don't need a blazer. You can just be a white t-shirt. If you like it, you can wear a tie, wear a watch, whatever. Then yeah, even if the interviewers and the company representative are wearing like t-shirts and slippers and all these things, don't wear it. So even if they say, oh yeah, it's all right, it's quite cultural, you can just come in anything you want. Don't go in with pajamas and things like that. Try to be professional. At least about 1 level or 2 level higher than what they say. So they say you can wear t-shirt, you try to wear smart casual, okay? If you say smart casual, you wear formal, okay? So it's always like 1 step ahead of what they want you to wear, right? So, and the next thing is be punctual. By punctual, it doesn't mean that you should be there 1 hour earlier or 30 minutes earlier, because if you go too early, they will think you're desperate. Right. If you're late and you're not good at that, so you should reach there about 30 minutes before, but don't go into the company. Okay. You go there about 30 minutes before because MRT delays, some other things happens, right? So you don't want to be late. So you try to be there about 30 minutes earlier. And maybe you just, go down to a coffee shop or just hang around near that area. Maybe go for lunch. I don't know. So about 10 minutes, you go in, right? Don't go too early. It sort of show these things that you are sort of depressed or you're desperate to get a job, right? So punctual doesn't mean too early. It's just right time. Right? 10 minutes, I think, good enough. And one thing to note is when you go there, try to be polite to the receptionist or whoever, right? Because most of the time, the candidates only care about interviewers, don't care about people outside, and they will try to like say, hey, hi, I'm here, right? To have an interview, and you try to talk down to the person because they're receptionists and things like that, you might get backfired. So, right. So, I mean, like I have been to a company where the receptionist is actually voluntary. So they don't really hire receptionists, and whoever there is part of their team. So it may be the manager, it may be the VP. They're just there to cover some of the shift, right? So just so happened that whoever is there is like your director, and then you just go and talk down to them because they are like too old and they're doing receptionist. Yeah, it's not going to work out for you, right? So there are many things that you will encounter. One is called whiteboard interview. So whiteboard interview, of course, is whiteboard and your marker, right? So just like, hey, solve this problem on the whiteboard. right? You probably won't have your IDE, your keyboard to help you. You have to write it down there, right? So you have to remember the syntax. You have to remember the programs that you're doing. You have to remember all the things that, because you have no internet. You can't like, hey, let me Google that. You can't do that. And yeah, live coding that I mentioned before. Yeah, you would just have a chance to like code in front of them, so people will watch you code, right? You might think that's easy, but if you go for the first time, it's not a fun experience. So you need to have some experience live coding. And sometimes it's real life problem solving, right? So I told you before, they might invite you in for one day and they give you some problem that is they're really facing it, right? Then you have to solve it like before the day ends. Then you were like, this is the problem that you will be working with if you get hired, right? So they want to see how you take approach to the real life problem solving. And the other is code review. So they probably give you a written code by someone else. That code can be very dirty, can be not so dirty, right? And they will just tell you, if you want to change, if you have to change 3 things from this code, what do you want to change and why? Then you got to explain your reasonings and the way, like the code that you want to change and things like that. It may be getting a better variable names, segment this code into a different function so that we can reuse it and things like that, right? So those questions will come out. And then, yeah, of course, no one will ask you a lot of questions because you will be timed to like 1 hour maximum, I think. Then you have to, it is very stressful situation that you have to go through that to understand how stressful it is. But this is how is typical whiteboard interviews looks like. And try to like write neatly and use the space efficiently, because sometimes you can't, because let's say like if you're using computer, you can just copy and paste to somewhere, right? But in whiteboard, you can't do that. Like if you start writing in the middle of the page, right? And you're not making use of all the space, then if the interviewer moves on to the next question, you're like, I cannot slide this down, right? I cannot swipe it to the left. I cannot copy paste to the other one. You got to erase the whole thing, rewrite over there, and it will take time, right? And you are not making good use of your time. So try to be efficient about your space and the way you present things. Try to label them so that you won't forget. It's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that when you explain back the code and say, this is step 1, I do this. Step 2, I do this, right? So you won't get lost. And try not to use the arrow everywhere. So like, oh yeah, this code is done, then I go all the way to the next stage, then you go arrow here, then arrow come back to the next stage, right? It sort of tell the interviewers that you're not organized and you didn't plan well, okay? So before write down, try to plan, okay, I use this for segment 1, I use this space for segment 2. Yeah, try to plan it. And of course, write neatly so that you can read back later on. So the next thing is like live coding. So someone either sit together with you or it will sit across you and ask you to present your code into the big screen, right? So they can all see all the typo you type, all the, whenever you forget semicolons or the curly braces, they know, right? So yeah, it's quite stressful, but if you are experienced enough, this is not really that stressful situation. You just have to like listen to them, try to communicate, and make sure that what they are asking is what you're answering. Yeah, that's the most important part. And in live interviews, you can still ask them for help. So, and some interviewer really like the candidates to ask for help if they are stuck, right? So just don't like us thinking for 30 minutes straight and never say anything. If you are stuck for like 1, 2, 3 minutes, you have nothing to say, just say, I'm stuck, can you give me some hints? Then most of the time they will, most of the time they don't. Yeah, so you just have to make do with what kind of hints that you get from them. So the next thing is, why do they do it? Of course, one is to test your skill, right? Like, are you a programmer? Are you a software engineer? Can you write code, right? Can you actually write the code that required for the real life problems? Can you solve this problem in like the time limit? Because in industry, it's always time, right? Like I need to push this thing in that time. So, and the other thing is CF fundamental, right? Like usually people will say, I can code, but do you know what's different between array and list? Then they like stand. I just use this as a for loop. I don't know, right? So they want you to know whether you really know you really have the CS fundamentals or not. The other thing that I mentioned before is problem solving. Can you solve a problem within a time frame? And how do you react within a pressure, right? Like sometimes they really pressure you to the point where you start crying. So how do you react this kind of situation? Do you just, close everything in, focus on the problems, or do you ask for help? There's a lot of behavior things that they are monitoring. So these are some of the things that you should take note. And always communicate. Whenever you go for on-site interview, you should always talking to the interviewers. There shouldn't be a case where you just think for 5 minutes, 10 minutes by yourself, and then you start writing code. No such thing. You should communicate, right? Like, I'm thinking these problems can be solved using this method. Am I going to the right direction? Do you think that is a good fit, right? They will say yes, no, yeah, maybe you can give it a try. Can you try first? So you should always be talking to them instead of, let me think for like 10 minutes, then I'll get back to you kind of thing. So you should always ask them while you're writing code, you should always say, oh, I'm writing this because I think this, right? Then even though the code might not be right, because you say your intent and your way of explaining things, the interviewers know what your thought process are, and they will say, yeah, sure. I mean, if you write this, you encounter this obstacle in like 4 lines, 5 lines. So I suggest that you rewrote it into some other way. So in that way, you save your time, right? You don't have to go through that 4 lines and then you sort of know that, oh, this solution doesn't work. I got to erase everything, then I come back again. So try to communicate always, remember. Right, now is how to prepare. So same thing, you got to research the audience, right? LinkedIn is really good to go and see what kind of languages they use. If they are from like, Java development process, right? You can almost expect that they're going to ask you like what's OOP and things like that. And you also need to find out the interview questions from Glassdoor. You can ask around other people, say, hey, what kind of interview do they ask for this, right? I mean, if you're friends, right, you can also sort of ask your friends. I don't know whether you guys want to share this kind of thing, but yeah, I mean, asking friends or whoever that went through like your seniors, it helps. It helps to like, let's say you want to get into company X, your seniors there, you just ask him or her, or they ask them like, okay, what kind of interview process you went through, right? What kind of question did they ask? And you sort of get some, interview tips. And then, yeah, of course, you have to practice coding, right? It's just like any other, craft. You have to practice. You got to solve LeetCode problems. You got to go for more interview, right? The only way to get better at interview is to keep going for interviews. That's the only way. And you have to ask someone senior to give you like more interview. So be it like your mentor, and SIT has a mentor program. Be your mentor, be it whoever senior, maybe your brothers, your cousins, whoever, say, hey, can you give me like a mock interview so that I know I'm ready, right? You can also ask your friend, right? You do a mock interview for them, they do a mock interview for you. It's a win-win situation. And of course, you have to read more book about technical interview. And trust me, books really helps, right? Okay, so like a lot of people say you can find almost everything on YouTube, but books give you like condensed information, like everything you need about this thing is in there, right? You got to read more books because from beginner to intermediate, probably YouTube and some other things can help. But if you really want to know what's happening underneath, right, books are the way to go. And yep, do more, practice more. Don't have to worry so much. I believe everyone can code and everyone can pass the technical interview if you put in enough effort for it. So yep, this is some of the example questions that you can see in your on-site interview. They will say, okay, given a large array of integer, write a program that I can identify the index of a given number, right? So example, I have array A that can go from 1 to n. I'm required to create a functions that say find 2 in A, then it should give me the index. So the 2 is at index 1, 3 is at index 2, etc., right? So you write this function that does that. If you're writing a for loop, you will say what's your time and space complexity, right? If you're writing a for loop, your time complexity should be n, and space complexity should be 1. Then they will say, can you do log n complexity for that, right? Then if you don't have any data structure and algorithm background, you haven't practiced it, you haven't studied your fundamentals, you probably don't know that binary search can do it in log n time, okay? So and using binary search have some criteria that you require. So the value has to be sorted, right? So you have to ask the interviewer, okay, in that case, right, can you tell me whether the list A will be sorted or not? If the list A is sorted, you can apply binary search. Then the binary search can find things in the log n space or log n time complexity, and of course n space, right? So these are things that you need to understand and try to be able to explain things, right? Not just be able to write code, right? I can create a website in one day. You can't impress that to the interviewer because everyone can do that. So yeah. The first time I see is like what I don't know what space complexity is. I don't know what time complexity is. Thanks for your time. I'm going back. Okay. So the next question is more of like the actual real life sort of problems, right? They say, can you design a banking system that can offer saving account and current account, and the account owner should be able to deposit and withdraw money, and you got to do a necessary check, right? And the valid conditions, you got to optimize the time complexity if you can. So these are like just 4 lines, but you got to write a lot of code, right? You need to adopt OOP concept. You need to adopt like inheritance concept. You got to do some check also, and you got to test for the valid condition, right? So checks, you got to verify what kind of checks. Is it withdrawal check? Is it deposit check? Is it like the person check, security, what kind of things? And time complexity, is it for all? Right? What are we optimizing for, right? They say optimize time, right? Optimize the time doesn't say that space. So there's like space and time trade-off that you can negotiate. So some programs can run really fast, but require a lot of space. Some program can run not as fast, but require very small space. So you got to do this trade-off thing, negotiate with the interviewers and say what they want to do. Right? Yeah. So it wasn't a great thing for not study, because you probably won't be able to answer these kind of questions if you never study at all. Right, so as promised, I'm going to give you some books that you can read at your own pace to try, right? I mean, like I used to be a student too, right? If people ask me to read books, I'm like, oh no, I'm not going to read books. I'm just going to go to YouTube, learn about this. But trust me, you should at least read this book in your life once, at least once, right? So one book is this book. Is a complete software developer career guide, because trust me, not all of you will want to be a programmer in the future, right? So what kind of career that I can branch out from being a software developer? And even if you want to proceed as a software developer, there are a lot of variation of software developer. What kind of developer you want to be? So this sort of book will give you that kind of information. So, and it's quite cheap to buy. If you don't want to buy, of course, you can find your source elsewhere. National Library in Singapore has this, so you can always go to like Bugis or whatever and borrow the book. And so this is the Cracking the Coding Interview. Is only cost about like $25, $28 to buy. And there's only physical books, but people there's no official PDF, right? So you probably won't be able to find the official PDF because the author didn't do it. So the author said, if you want to invest, you have to buy physical ones, and she only sells physical one. And the next thing is the clean code, right? So when you go for live interview and you go for like live coding things, if you start writing bad codes, they probably won't take you as suitable candidates. You got to be able to write clean code and also give you like some advantage over other candidates who can't really write clean code. So if you write clean code, trust me, people will notice it. Right, so we are about the end of the presentation, right? So whatever things that I cover is only the tip of the iceberg, okay? There's a lot of things that you haven't explored or I haven't said it out here. you have to experience it yourself. And things are changing like really fast, right? It might not be the same in like 1 or 2 years. They might change to some other thing. So there's a lot of things that you haven't covered yet. I suggest that you just study well, get back to your fundamentals, make your basics, everything like data structure, all these things right, and you probably can solve most of the problems out there. Okay, so imagine you want to be a software developer in the future, right? It's very similar to becoming a professional swimmer, right? How many of you thinks that the Olympic swimmer just watch the YouTube video of people swimming and they become Olympic swimmer? There's none of them, right? Everyone has to go out there, dig into the water, and they have to start swimming every day, right? So as a programmer, it's same thing, because these are the craft that we have to polish it over time, right? Every time you have a chance, you got to go and practice it. You got to go and practice it. Like if you don't practice it, trust me, there will be a scale decay. And once you stop writing code for 1 or 2 years, you will really see that you can't write code anymore. Okay, so this is something that I want to warn you guys. You have to keep practicing to be better. And if you're not writing code, trust me, your skill will decay. And another thing is keeping up. Technologies advance really fast. Like nowadays, like when I graduate, right, there wasn't much JavaScript framework came out. But nowadays, like React.js, AngularJS, Node.js, there's a lot of things coming out in JavaScript, right? So at almost I'm like irrelevant in terms of web development, because I'm not in the web development space and all the tools are being advanced to some other things, right? Pretty much I know HTML and CSS, but they changed to HTML5 and CSS3. And there's a lot more things that can happen. There's also like compile CSS, right? The SES thing and all this sort of thing, right? So there's a lot of things that you have to keep up. And don't just take it as if I know one thing and I will be employable for my entire career. No such thing. You have to keep up. You have to keep learning the new tools in your own free time, and you have to keeping up with what technology is going on, what the trend is going on, so that you're always in the market to get a job. Okay. So yep, this is the end of my presentation. I really thanks everyone who make these slides possible. I got all the images from the Unsplash template from the Slide Carnival, and of course I got Halo images from the Halo fandom. Right, that's the end of my presentation. If you want to connect with me, you can connect with me from scanning the QR code, or either go back and find my respective Twitter or LinkedIn. If you have questions, right, very, very pressing questions, I might be able to answer, but I will try to answer as much as possible, right? But please don't take it as like I'm not friendly because I do answer your questions, right? Okay, so I will try to answer, but if I'm busy, I probably ignore you for a while, but I will try to get back to you as soon as possible. Right, so these slides will be sent to you from the organizing team, and we can move to the question and answer.
Yep. Okay, thank you, Tuya, for the enriching and insightful sharing on tackling the entire technical interview process. I believe the participants in this session have gained insight on both the screening interview and the on-site interview. So some points I've taken away is that you have to make the best first impression you can, being sufficiently prepared for the interview and competent enough by practicing with commonly asked data structures and algorithms. So now we'll open the floor to we'll be opening the floor to questions on Slido. Yeah. Okay, so the first thing that we see here is that what are some of the biggest red flags that are common among young grads, or mistakes that are most frequently made?
The mistakes that young grads make normally is thinking themselves as a very highly skilled programmer. But I know you might get A+ in your assignment, or you might score really well, and your professor really thinks that you're great, and you may be the best in the entire cohort. But trust me, out there, people don't care whether you get A+ or not A+. They only care about whether you can solve real life problems, right? Because that's how company make money. And sometimes the young grads might think themselves really high, and then look down on other people, try not to, because I can code, I don't care what you say to me and things like that. So that's not really great. So be mindful of that, and always be humble, right? Because you are just fresh grad. even though the interviewers maybe not having a bachelor degree, but respect them because they are in the industry for very longer than you have.
Yes, agree. Once you go out there, then like you'll find out like how inexperienced that we all are. Lah.
Yeah,
Right.
and like it's hard to it has to verify your claim, right? Because you haven't proved yourself first, right? Like, I mean, if you graduate, you get into Google or whatnot, right? Then you probably can say like, okay, I have the skills to do it, but now you don't even have a job. So what you try to say, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, for the next question, since we've been talking about a lot about practicing and practicing and practicing, so like what should we practice? So what are the common algorithms that are tested during technical interviews?
Okay, the common ones, there are like 10 of them. Like usually it's like binary search and things like that. So if you go YouTube and find top common technical interview algorithm, you can find is really popular. So you just study that. There's like easy, medium to hard. So the easy ones are like binary search and all these sort of things. Then the hard ones are more towards graph and try to apply, how to reverse the linked list and all this sort of thing. So you have to, so don't study the problems, study the basic and try to break down into smaller problems that you can solve using the algorithm. So knowing the algorithm give you advantage, but don't just try to fit into the algorithm always. Try to be creative about your solution.
Okay. So for the next one, so what are your thoughts on like long and tedious tech interviews? Do you think they are effective in like filtering good candidates, or it's just a thing of the past?
I mean, the big companies usually like they will take a very long time to get back to you because they have a lot of things to go through. But be mindful of very long companies, right? So it depends on like, let's say you're applying to FANG, right? Google, Facebook, Amazon. You expect, because there's a lot of candidates applying, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have to expect longer time, and you have to expect that because their time around time might not be that fast. But if you're applying to like the company with, not so much reputations, but they're taking very long, then yeah, I don't think that's a good place that you want to be because if they are taking too long to even hire you, then why are you here, right?
Yeah. Okay, Hon, there's also another FANG related question up here. So what are the differences in tech interviews when I apply for FANG companies versus lesser known companies?
Based on my experience, depends on the role that you're applying for, right? FANG companies sometimes have better experience in interviewing because they are bound by a lot of rules, right? You have to be inclusive. They have to be non-judgmental. They have to record everything they say in the interview. They have to write down everything you say in the interview. So the FANG company will have like, in my opinion, sometimes has a better standard than typical interview because they have to really record down everything you say, and they also be mindful of what they do. Differences will be like FANG company try to ask you harder questions, of course, because it's FANG, right? Lesser known companies sometimes will ask you the hard question as well, but it based on what you want to find out, right? And like I said, differences can be many things. Is it difficulty? Is it the interviewer quality? Is it the experience, right? So what kind of differences? It may be a lot of things. And until you experience it, you won't be able to tell the difference. Most of the time, it's just pretty much screening on site, then you get a job.
Okay, I understand. So for the next one, if let's say my technical skills aren't good, does that mean I can't find a job?
No, don't think for a second that you can't find a job. You can always find a job, but is it your dream job? That's the problem, right? So if you're not technically inclined, so in my personal opinion, I believe everyone can be a coder, okay? This is why I'm running this community called Geeks Hacking, where we bring non-tech to tech. So if I say I don't believe people can code, then why am I doing this in a way, right? So if your technical skills are not good, but you are in this CS program, right? There's a lot of jobs out there that require you to use more of your personality skills, rather like management skills, your interpersonal skills, instead of your core tech skill. So you won't be like a programmer per se, but you can always explore some other opportunities, such as the business analyst, where you gather requirement from the clients and then you sort of like map into a technical content, right? So this kind of thing can be solved using that. There are some other things like advocate. There are some other things like consultant. So not every jobs in tech requires coding skills. So there's like management job. There's like, analyst job. There's also things like technical writer. If your writing is really good and you have tech knowledge, right? You can be technical writer, and like companies like Google, Facebook, they hire very good technical writer as well. So you can always get to FANG even if you're not coding.
Okay, thanks. So time now is a bit over 8. We just take 2 more questions. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
All right. So how often do you need to practice for like lead code and like grand DSA kind of questions?
Okay, so depends on which company you are looking for, right? If you're looking for FANG company, you should try like medium or hard. But if you're looking for a normal company, probably easy to medium. But don't write lead code or don't solve lead code for the sake of passing the lead code questions. It should rather be to test your understanding, right? I look at the questions. Do I understand what kind of algorithm to apply? Do I understand how to approach these questions? Right? You probably won't even have to write it out. As long as you understand it, you can move on to the next one.
Okay. Okay, so for our last question here, do you think hiring bias is a prevalent issue in Singapore, especially within the tech industry?
That's the thing. What's bias? Is it like gender bias? Is it like racial bias?
I guess from your experience, do you have you encountered any sort of biasness?
The only bias I had last time, it was because of my name, right? Because I'm not local to it. Then when I apply for a local job, the people will think I'm not local, and then they sort of like don't contact me, that sort of thing. But that's like honest mistake, right? Because you can't really stick my NRIC on my resume and send them, right? So yeah.
Okay. How do you overcome stressfulness during coding tests?
Keep practicing and practicing. Okay. Go next one.
If you can't code out a problem, how do you at least show that you are trying or that you're different from other coders?
Communicate, try to explain what your thought process are to the interviewers. They say like, hi, I'm actually, I want to make it work, right? I'm trying. This is my thinking process. Can you give me some hint? Can you direct me to the good part and things like that?
Okay. So for the coding test, can you write pseudocode or?
Depends on the company. So FANG company, you can't write pseudocode. I'm sorry. You have to write, you have to remember the syntax, and you have to write on, like, let's say Google, right? You got to write into the Google Docs. So there's no IDE, there's nothing, right? So, and you can Google the syntax. So yeah, pseudocode may work for some companies. So I've been through some interview where they say pseudocode is fine, then you can write pseudocode.
Okay. So why do you think FANG companies are more highly sought after?
If you ask me, okay, there are a few things. One is salary, right? So FANG company offer this thing called stock vesting, where they give you huge amount of stocks when you join them, right? So it's like 2 or 3 times more than what you normally get as a normal company, right? So this is one of the reasons. The other thing is prestige, right? So if you get into FANG company, sort of show that you are capable. That's another one. The third one is interesting projects. So sometimes some of the projects that you might be interested in are only available in FANG level kind of company, right? So you cannot find this kind of thing elsewhere, right? Let's say you want to be a top-notch AI scientist, you got to join a group like DeepMind in Google, right? So that you get to do what you like to do, right? Mm-hmm. So it's not just about FANG, then everyone go after. So it depends on what you want.
Okay. How much time should we give to prepare for technical interviews before starting to send out applications?
I think you should start at least like a month before you start applying, right? So you study things like the lead code questions, try to solve 1 or 2 problems every day, read the books, try to watch YouTube video, practice for like 1 month, then you start applying. But when you apply, still doing practice, okay? You apply, then you just stop. Don't do that. You keep on doing until you get a job, then you stop.
Okay. Besides lead code, HackerRank, Are there any platforms used to conduct coding assessments?
There are tons of it, like Asosism is one of them. There's like Algo Expert, one of them, but some of them are not free. So you have to be mindful, like, do I really want to invest this here? Yeah, algoexpert.io is also one of the things, but it's called 100 USD or something to sign up. So depends on how rich you are. You can try, right? LeetCode also have premiums. You can also try, but I mean, try to get a book. Like the book is only like $30, right? And it has a lot of good things.
All right. So how do you stand out during the screening interview?
A screening interview is try to answer correctly and be polite, and also ask them interesting questions, right? Like it can be about the interviewer personal life, right? Because I told you got to research their background. So when you research your background and you can see like, hey, you know what you did for your previous job, this kind of thing. So you really shows that you research, right? That sort of gives you stand out, right? Like if you know about my previous job, then you ask me, I sort of know you because you are the only one that asked me about my previous job, right? Yeah, so you have to do that impression. Okay,
so post-interview, for the email, how do you send like something memorable for them to remember you?
Yeah, so it's sort of linked to the previous thing, right? So you have to find something that is differentiate you from the other candidates, right? It has to be your communication. So usually I will ask, right? So what are the things that you enjoy doing during your free time, right? Then usually people won't ask that kind of question to the interviewer, right? Then I know that, oh, this guy like to hike, and then say, hey, yeah, you know what? If I get to this company, we probably go for hiking together. Then sort of give you some bonding and like give you some indication that you are thinking ahead, right? Not just I just don't do this for this interview. I'm thinking ahead. I'm sort of like in my mind, I'm already in the company with you hiking together. This is great. It's best if you can draw. Oh no, don't draw. Just kidding. Try to link up some of the personal experience and the feelings.
Okay. So can you Google or Stack Overflow during coding questions?
Again, depends on the company. So some company allow you to Google, some company don't. Fang usually don't let you Google at all. You cannot ask anybody except the interviewer. That's why I say ask the interviewer. Interviewer will be your Google.
Okay. Difference between LeetCode and HackerRank?
Not much of a difference. It's just a medium of practice. Yeah, you do whatever suits your personal needs. Yeah.
Any job roles which are not extremely competitive and can be gotten easily?
Any job roles? I mean, again, like what kind of job? There's a lot of jobs. Not really competitive. There are a lot of easy, but do you want to be in that position? Okay, imagine you are a software developer and you can write code, but when you are in like a company where no one can write code, then you are the only one that can write code. Do you want to be in that company where, because it's easy to get in, everyone get in, right? So, yeah.
Okay. What kind of jobs will test knowledge on space-time complexity? This one should depend on the interview also, right?
Usually software engineer. Yeah, software engineer, they were that kind of test.
Okay. If I almost coded the solution, but there's no solution due to time constraint, will they look at how I code?
Yes, they will look into so depends if you are doing the take-home assignments or online tests, no pass, fail. Okay. But if you're doing live interview, even if you don't finish the whole thing, if you give a good impression, if you give a lot of explanation, your thought process, communicate, you can still get a job.
All right. Okay. This is about Googling. I think we covered this just now.
Yeah.
All right. And that's all the questions that we have for today then. Thank you so much for answering all of them.
No problem.
Yeah. Let's go back to the slides for a bit.
All right. Yeah. Thanks so much for having me here. I hope all the best with your job hunting. If you add me on LinkedIn or whatever, if I don't reply, please, allow me a few days to get back to it. Right. See you guys soon and all the best.
Thank you, Tuya.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
For the rest of us, anyways, we have come to the end of the session. Please follow us on Geeks, sit.geeks on Instagram, and join our upcoming event, 5 Ways Workshop on 29 April at SIT at NYP. Joey will drop some links in chat. Thank you.